I never thought I'd step foot in this town again. Yet here I was, standing at the edge of Ridgewood, a forgotten place buried under years of dust and regret. The Greyhound bus hissed as it pulled away, leaving me alone on the cracked sidewalk, gripping a battered duffel bag. It had been 16 years since I left. 16 years since the trial that ripped my family apart. The sun hung low in the sky, painting everything in shades of burnt orange. The air smelled of asphalt and distant pine. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. I wasn't here for revenge. At least, that's what I kept telling myself. A few blocks down, past the rusting gas station and the boarded-up diner, sat the house I once called home. It looked smaller now, the paint peeling, the porch sagging. My fingers twitched as I reached for the doorknob, but I hesitated. Ethan? I turned. Sarah. My sister. The last time I saw her, she had been a teenager, crying as they dragged me out of the courtroom. Now, she was a woman in her 30s, eyes sharp, jaw set. She had our mother's face. I heard you were back, she said cautiously. I nodded, unsure of what to say. What did you say after 16 years? She stepped forward, crossing her arms. Why now? The answer sat heavy in my chest. Because Dad was dead. Because I had nowhere else to go. Because I needed to see her. Before I could respond, the screen door creaked open, and a small girl peeked out. She had dark curls and wary eyes, Sarah's daughter. My niece. A lump formed in my throat. I had missed so much. Sarah followed my gaze. This is Lily. She hesitated, then added, your niece. Lily. The name hit me like a punch to the gut. My sister had named her after our mother. Hi, I said, my voice rough from disuse. Lily didn't answer. She just watched me, her small hands gripping the edge of the doorframe. Sarah sighed. Come inside. You look like hell. I followed her into the house, my body tense. The inside smelled like wood polish and faint cinnamon. Familiar, yet foreign. Family photos lined the walls, but I wasn't in any of them. It was as if I had been erased. Sarah led me to the kitchen. She poured coffee into a chipped mug and pushed it toward me. So, she said, sitting across from me. Are you back for good? I wrapped my fingers around the mug, letting the warmth seep into my skin. I don't know yet. Her lips pressed into a thin line. Dad left you something. I froze. What? Sarah stood, disappearing into the next room. When she returned, she held a small wooden box. She placed it in front of me without a word. My hands shook as I lifted the lid. Inside, a bundle of old letters, a rusted key, and a folded piece of paper. I unfolded the note. The handwriting was unmistakable, my father's, rough and hurried. Ethan, if you're reading this, I'm gone. There are things you don't know. The past isn't what you think it is. Find the truth. The key is to what's left. The breath hitched in my throat. My father had never been a man of many words. This was more than I had ever expected from him. What is this? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Sarah crossed her arms. I don't know. He left it with the lawyer. Said it was for you. I thought about throwing it away. I swallowed hard. But you didn't. No, she admitted. Because I wanted to hear what you found. I stared at the key. Rusted, worn. What did it unlock? The past was a grave I had no intention of digging up. But now, standing at its edge, I wasn't sure I had a choice. Sarah watched me, her gaze unreadable. Whatever it is, Ethan, be careful. Some things are buried for a reason. I nodded, slipping the key into my pocket. Outside, the wind howled through the trees. The ghosts of Ridgewood were waking up. And so was I. The cold night air stung my face as I stepped onto the abandoned road, my pulse still hammering from the encounter at the old factory. I didn't know if I had truly escaped, or if I was simply running toward another nightmare. The wind howled through the trees, carrying whispers of unseen dangers. My heart pounded as I pressed forward, desperate to put as much distance as possible between myself and whatever lurked in the darkness. The weight of my exhaustion slowed me, but fear pushed me onward. My mind reeled, trying to piece together what had happened. Who were those men? What did they want from me? And most importantly, why did I feel like I had seen that symbol before, the one etched into the walls of that cursed building? I spotted an old convenience store up ahead, its flickering neon sign barely clinging to life. I hesitated. I needed help, but I couldn't risk trusting the wrong person. Still, I had to take the chance. With a deep breath, I stepped inside, the bell above the door jangling loudly in the silence of the night. The store was nearly empty, save for a bored-looking clerk behind the counter. His eyes flicked up from his phone, barely registering my presence before returning to his screen. I grabbed a bottle of water and approached the counter, my fingers trembling slightly as I reached into my pocket for a few crumpled bills. "You okay?" the clerk asked, finally looking at me with mild curiosity. I hesitated, considering my response. "Just passing through," I muttered, forcing a weak smile. He nodded slowly, his gaze lingering on me for a moment longer than necessary. "You look like you've seen a ghost." If only he knew. I took my change and turned to leave when something outside caught my eye, a dark figure standing across the street, motionless, watching. My breath hitched. He was there. He had found me. Panic surged through me. I turned back to the clerk, my voice barely above a whisper. "Is there a back exit?" His brows furrowed, but he pointed toward a door near the storage room. Without another word, I bolted. The moment I stepped outside, the night swallowed me whole. I pressed myself against the alley wall, forcing my breathing to slow, my pulse to quiet. I had to think. I had to plan. A car engine roared to life in the distance. Tires screeched against the pavement. They were closing in. I couldn't stay here. I took off, sprinting down the alley, my footsteps echoing between the tall, crumbling buildings. My lungs burned, my legs ached, but I couldn't stop. Not now. Not when I was so close to finding the truth. I reached an old train yard, the rusting hulks of abandoned freight cars looming like silent sentinels. I slipped between them, my breath visible in the frigid air. Somewhere in the distance, a train horn bellowed, a deep, mournful sound that sent shivers down my spine. Then I heard them. Footsteps. Slow. Measured. Closing in. I ducked behind a stack of wooden crates, my back pressed hard against the cold steel of an old shipping container. My mind raced. I needed a weapon, something, anything, I could use to defend myself. My fingers brushed against a jagged piece of metal. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. A shadow stretched across the ground before me. My breath caught in my throat. They were right there. The silence stretched unbearably before a voice shattered it. "You can't run forever." I recognized that voice. Low. Menacing. The same voice that had whispered in my ear back at the factory. I gripped the metal tighter, my knuckles white. Every fiber of my being screamed at me to move, to fight, to survive. Then, in one desperate motion, I lunged. I knew I had no time to waste. The weight of what had happened pressed down on me, suffocating, but I couldn't let it slow me down. I had to keep moving. Every second counted. I gritted my teeth and forced my legs to run faster, dodging through the narrow alleyways behind the abandoned buildings on the outskirts of the city. The night air was thick with the stench of damp concrete and rusting metal. My heart pounded against my ribs, but I couldn't afford to stop. Somewhere behind me, I could still hear the echoes of footsteps. They were closing in. I ducked behind a dumpster, trying to catch my breath, forcing myself to think. I needed a plan, but my mind was a blur of fear and adrenaline. My phone was gone, lost in the struggle. I had no way to call for help. And even if I did, who could I trust? The people who had done this, who had set me up, who had taken everything from me, were powerful. They had resources, connections. They had erased my existence in a matter of hours. My apartment had been ransacked, my accounts drained. They wanted to make sure I disappeared, permanently. I pressed my back against the cold brick wall, trying to steady my breathing. Think, Jason. Think. There had to be a way out of this. Then, suddenly, a hand clamped down on my shoulder. I reacted on instinct, twisting away, my fist shooting out in a wild punch. It connected with something solid, and I heard a grunt of pain. The figure staggered back, giving me just enough time to see who it was. Damn it, Jason, it's me. I blinked, my vision adjusting to the dim light. It was Ethan. My only friend left in this godforsaken city. Ethan? What the hell are you doing here? My voice was hoarse from running, from fear. I could ask you the same thing, he said, rubbing his jaw where I'd hit him. You look like you've seen a ghost. I might as well have. I swallowed hard. They're after me. They took everything. I don't even know who I can trust anymore. Ethan's face darkened. Come on. We need to get off the streets. Now. I hesitated for a split second before nodding. I had no choice. Ethan had always been there for me, even when things got tough. If I couldn't trust him, then I really was alone. We moved quickly, staying in the shadows, taking side streets and back alleys until we reached a rundown apartment complex. Ethan led me up a narrow staircase to a tiny unit on the top floor. The place was a mess. Papers, old takeout containers, and half-empty bottles littered the surfaces. But it was safe. For now. Ethan locked the door behind us and turned to face me. Start talking. What the hell happened? I ran a hand through my hair, trying to piece everything together. I don't even know where to begin. 1 minute, I was just going about my day, and the next, everything was gone. They framed me for something I didn't do. My accounts are wiped, my name is probably on a watch list somewhere, and I hesitated, feeling the weight of the words. And someone is dead because of me. Ethan's expression didn't change, but I saw the muscles in his jaw tighten. Who? A woman. I don't even know her name. But they made sure it looked like I was involved. Ethan let out a slow breath. Jesus. I leaned forward, gripping the edge of the table. I need to find out who's behind this. And I need to clear my name before they find me again. Ethan was silent for a moment, his fingers drumming against the tabletop. Then he stood up and disappeared into the other room. When he came back, he was holding a laptop. We start here, he said, powering it on. If someone did this to you, they left a trail. And we're going to find it. I exhaled, tension still coiled tight in my chest. I wasn't out of danger. Not by a long shot. But for the first time in hours, I had something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. The cold wind howled through the desolate alleyway as Ethan pressed his back against the rough brick wall, his heart hammering in his chest. The sound of footsteps echoed in the distance, methodical and deliberate. He clenched his jaw, willing himself to remain silent. He knew they were hunting him now. The events of the past 24 hours had been a blur of desperation and survival. Ever since uncovering the truth behind Project Vanguard, Ethan had been on the run. His closest ally, Sophia, had gone radio silent. He didn't know if she had been captured or if she was in hiding. Either way, he was on his own now. His fingers curled around the flash drive hidden in his pocket. The information on it was damning, evidence of government-backed experiments that went far beyond anything the public could imagine. But none of it would matter if he didn't make it out alive. He needed a plan. Ethan peeked around the corner, scanning the dimly lit street. A black SUV idled near the curb, its tinted windows making it impossible to see inside. He had seen too many like it in the past few days, always just a little too close, always watching. He took a breath, forced his muscles to relax, and slipped into the shadows, moving with calculated precision. His goal was clear: reach the safe house on the other side of the city. If Sophia was still out there, that was where she'd be waiting. The city felt different at night, an eerie quiet blanketing the streets. He stayed off the main roads, navigating through narrow alleyways and side streets. Every sound put him on edge: the distant bark of a dog, the rustling of trash in a dumpster. Paranoia was his closest companion now. Half an hour later, he arrived at an abandoned building that had once been a warehouse. The address had been burned into his memory, the last safe point before he could attempt to get the information out to the world. He approached cautiously, checking his surroundings before slipping inside through a broken side door. The air was thick with dust and the faint scent of mildew. Moonlight filtered through the shattered windows, casting long shadows on the concrete floor. He moved deeper inside, every step cautious, every muscle tense. Then he heard it, a whisper of movement behind him. Ethan spun around just in time to see a figure emerging from the darkness. He reached for his weapon, but a familiar voice stopped him cold. "Ethan, it's me. Sophia." Relief crashed over him like a wave, but it was short-lived. She looked exhausted, her clothes torn, a deep gash on her arm that had been hastily bandaged. "You're alive," he breathed, lowering his weapon. "Barely," she replied. "They're closing in." She stepped closer, eyes darting to the door behind him. "Did you bring it?" He nodded and pulled the flash drive from his pocket. Sophia's breath hitched as she reached for it, her hands trembling. "We don't have much time," she whispered. "They know about this place." As if on cue, a sudden crash echoed through the building. Ethan's instinct screamed at him to move, and he grabbed Sophia's wrist, pulling her toward the rear exit. Gunfire erupted, the deafening sound ricocheting through the empty space. Bullets tore through the walls, sending shards of concrete flying. Ethan ducked behind a stack of rusted metal crates, dragging Sophia down with him. "We need another way out," he hissed. "There's a fire escape in the back," she panted. "If we can make it." Another burst of gunfire forced them lower. Ethan's mind raced. They were trapped. And then, in the chaos, he heard something far worse, a voice, calm and controlled. "Ethan Carter. You've made this difficult for us." Ethan froze. He knew that voice. Agent Miles Lancaster stepped into view, his expression unreadable, his weapon raised. Behind him, two other operatives stood, their guns trained on Ethan and Sophia. "Hand over the drive," Lancaster ordered. "This doesn't have to end badly for you." Ethan met his gaze, his mind working frantically. He had expected this, had known they would come for him. But he couldn't give up now. Sophia tensed beside him. "We can't let them take it." He knew she was right. He had sacrificed too much, risked everything. The world needed to know the truth. A plan formed in his mind, a desperate, reckless plan. He locked eyes with Sophia. She gave the smallest nod, understanding passing between them in an instant. Then, without warning, Ethan moved. He launched himself to the side, rolling just as the first shot rang out. Sophia followed, using the distraction to dart toward the fire escape. The operatives opened fire, but they were a fraction of a second too slow. Ethan hit the ground hard, pain jolting through his shoulder, but he pushed himself up. He fired blindly in their direction, buying time as Sophia scrambled up the metal ladder. Lancaster cursed, barking orders, but Ethan was already moving. He grabbed onto the fire escape and hauled himself up. Sophia was ahead of him, her movements quick despite her injuries. The rooftop was their only chance. If they could get high enough, they might be able to escape into the maze of neighboring buildings. More gunfire erupted as they climbed. A bullet grazed Ethan's leg, searing pain shooting through him, but he kept going. There was no stopping now. They reached the roof just as the agent stormed out onto the fire escape below. Lancaster's voice carried up to them. "This is pointless, Ethan. There's nowhere left to run." But Ethan knew better. He glanced at Sophia, who was already sprinting toward the edge of the building. Then, without hesitation, she jumped. Ethan's breath caught as he watched her land on the adjacent rooftop, rolling to absorb the impact. She turned, eyes wide, waiting for him. The sound of footsteps pounded behind him. He didn't think. He ran. And then he leaped. For a split second, time seemed to stop. The space between the buildings stretched endlessly below him. Then his feet hit solid ground, his momentum carrying him forward. He barely managed to stay on his feet. Sophia grabbed his arm, pulling him forward. "We need to keep moving." Ethan glanced back. Lancaster and his men had reached the rooftop, but they weren't following. Not yet. But he knew this wasn't over. They had survived the night. But the real fight was only beginning. I barely had time to process what had just happened before the weight of the moment settled on my shoulders. The cold night air pressed against my skin as I clutched the steering wheel, my pulse hammering in my ears. The distant sound of sirens wailed through the city streets, growing louder with each passing second. I had to move. Now. I pressed down on the gas, weaving through the narrow backstreets, trying to stay out of sight. My thoughts raced faster than the car itself. Everything had spiraled so far out of control. Just days ago, I was an ordinary person, and now, I was running for my life. I had no choice. The people chasing me, they wouldn't stop until I was either silenced or buried 6 feet under. As I sped past dimly lit alleys and shuttered shops, I spotted a parking garage ahead. Perfect. I swerved sharply, the tires screeching against the pavement as I pulled inside. The moment I turned off the engine, the garage fell into eerie silence, broken only by the distant echoes of the sirens. I slumped back in the seat, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I needed to think. My phone vibrated in my pocket. Hesitantly, I pulled it out and saw a message from an unknown number. "Meet me at the old train station. Midnight. Alone. This is your last chance." I swallowed hard. My last chance? For what? To escape? To make things right? I didn't know who sent the message, but deep down, I had a feeling I couldn't ignore it. I had nothing left to lose. I waited for the streets to clear before slipping out of the parking garage and making my way toward the old train station. The city felt unnervingly quiet, like it was holding its breath, waiting for the inevitable explosion. I parked a few blocks away and continued on foot, staying in the shadows, my senses heightened with every step. The station was a relic of the past, abandoned, forgotten, and eerily desolate. The broken windows allowed the moonlight to cast jagged shadows along the cracked pavement. I stepped inside cautiously, my heart thudding in my chest. The musty scent of decay filled my nostrils. Then, I saw him. A figure stood beneath a flickering overhead light, his face obscured by shadows. As I stepped closer, he finally emerged into the dim glow. It was Ryan. Shock hit me like a freight train. Ryan, my closest friend, my only ally, was standing right in front of me. Alive. My legs felt like jelly. I started, but the words caught in my throat. He was supposed to be dead. I saw him fall. I saw the blood. And yet, here he was. Ryan's expression was unreadable as he studied me. "I didn't have a choice," he said finally. "Neither do you." My hands curled into fists. "What the hell is going on?" "They killed you." "I saw them." "No," he interrupted. "They wanted you to see that. It was all part of the plan. To make you desperate. To make you run. And you did exactly what they wanted." I took a shaky step back. "You're lying." "Am I?" "Think about it. Every move you've made so far, they anticipated it. They knew you'd go looking for answers. They knew you'd find the drive. And they knew that, eventually, you'd come here." His voice was steady, calculated. "Because I led you here." My blood turned to ice. "You're working for them." He exhaled, looking away for a brief moment. "I made a deal. To stay alive. To keep you alive. But you keep fighting them, and you're making things worse. A bitter laugh escaped my lips. So what now? You hand me over? Let them finish the job. Ryan's jaw tightened. I don't want that. I want to help you. But you have to trust me. Trust. The word felt foreign now. Everyone I had trusted had either betrayed me or died. Before I could respond, the sound of approaching footsteps echoed through the station. My stomach twisted into knots. We weren't alone. Ryan's eyes darted to the shadows. They're here. We don't have much time. I stepped back, panic surging through my veins. Then we need to get out of here. Now. No. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded slip of paper, shoving it into my hand. You need to go alone. Follow this address. There's someone there who can help. But you need to leave. Now. I hesitated. What about you? He gave me a sad smile. I'll buy you time. It clicked then. He wasn't coming with me. He had made his choice. And now, I had to make mine. The voices grew louder. I clenched my jaw, forcing myself to turn away. My chest burned with unspoken words, with the weight of 1,000 questions. But there was no time. I ran. The night swallowed me whole as I darted through the empty streets, Ryan's instructions clenched in my fist. My lungs burned, my muscles screamed, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. Not until I reached the address. Not until I knew the truth. Minutes stretched into an eternity before I finally arrived at the location. A rundown motel on the outskirts of the city. The neon sign buzzed weakly, casting an eerie red glow over the parking lot. I forced myself forward, up the creaky stairs to the room number scrawled on the paper. My fingers trembled as I knocked. The door cracked open, revealing a woman in her late 50s. Her piercing blue eyes studied me carefully. Then, without a word, she stepped aside and motioned for me to enter. The door shut behind me, sealing my fate. You must be Nathan, she said finally, her voice calm, knowing. I swallowed hard. Who are you? She exhaled, walking to the small table and placing a worn-out folder in front of me. Someone who has been waiting for you. I hesitated before reaching for it. The moment I opened it, my blood ran cold. Inside were documents, photos, files, evidence. Everything they had done. Everything they had covered up. And in the middle of it all was a picture of me. I felt my pulse thunder in my ears. What is this? She met my gaze, her expression grave. The reason they want you dead. A chill ran down my spine. Welcome to the truth, Nathan.